I was standing at the end of the aisle in a thrift store dress, the color of old ivory, and in front of me were 45 white chairs, and 38 of them were empty. The wind came up off the salt marsh and moved through the vacant rows and rustled the sprigs of lavender tied to every seat, as if the afternoon itself were trying to fill the silence my family had left behind. 2 college girls with a violin and a cello had started to play, and the sound floated out over the water. I lifted my chin, I took a breath, and I got ready to walk down that aisle completely alone, because the man who had promised to walk me down it was, at that very moment, eating finger sandwiches at a country club an hour and a half away. Then I heard footsteps behind me, heavy, deliberate, steady. If you have ever been the person sitting in the empty chairs while someone else got the full room, stay with me, because I promise you the story does not end at that altar. It barely begins there. But to understand why those chairs were empty, I have to take you back 6 weeks, to the sentence my sister said to me that I will hear in my head for the rest of my life. "You can have a wedding anytime, Maren. This is my first baby." She said it the way you choose between brunch spots. Like my wedding day was a minor scheduling conflict she could shuffle around her convenience. And then she booked her baby shower for the same day, the same hour, and one by one my entire family lined up behind her. My mother, my aunts, my cousins, even my father, the man who held my hand when I was small and swore he would walk me down the aisle. He chose catered hors d'oeuvres over his own daughter's vows. My name is Maren Sorensen. I am 28 years old, and I am an illustrator. In my family, that sentence lands somewhere between a hobby and an apology. Let me introduce you to the Sorensens. My father, Wallace Sorensen, spent 29 years as a branch manager at a regional bank in Providence. Respectable, steady, the kind of man who wore the same 3 neckties on rotation and called that discipline. My mother, Miriam, stayed home, hosted her book clubs, and made sure the house in Barrington always looked the part. White clapboard, black shutters, hydrangeas along the walkway. From the road, we looked like a postcard. From the inside, the arithmetic told a different story. My older sister, Genevieve, married Blake Sutton 6 years ago. The Suttons ran a commercial real estate company, or at least they did back then. Blake was golden in those days. He bought Genevieve a luxury SUV and a diamond tennis bracelet, and far more importantly, he bought my parents' loyalty. Blake paid the mortgage on the Barrington house. He handed my mother a supplementary credit card. He financed the new kitchen, and in return, the entire family treated my sister as though she had cured a disease. Genevieve has not earned a paycheck in 7 years. She calls herself a socialite and an event planner, though I have never once seen evidence of either. But in my family, marrying well and doing well are the same sentence. And then there was me, the younger one, the one who freelanced as an illustrator, children's books and editorial art, the kind of work that does not come with a corner office or a business card. The one who lived in a rented studio in Providence, with paint-stained countertops and a second-hand couch. I never resented Genevieve for marrying rich. I resented that it made everyone forget I existed. I met Elias Mercer at an art fair in Providence 3 years ago. He was standing in front of one of his own paintings, a large oil piece of a woman reading on a fire escape, the light catching her hair just so, and he was frowning at it like it owed him money. I laughed. He turned, and something in his eyes, a quiet, focused intensity, made me stop breathing for a second. Elias is a contemporary realist painter. He works in oil, mostly portraits and urban landscapes, and he has the kind of talent people in the art world call rare, and my family called not a real job. He sold pieces through small galleries and took commissions when they came. Some months were good. Some months we ate a great deal of pasta, but we were building something honest, and that mattered more to me than any quarterly bonus. My family never once saw it that way. The Thanksgiving 8 months before the wedding, I brought Elias to the Barrington house for dinner. Genevieve swept in carrying 2 bottles of Napa Valley Cabernet, $180 a bottle. She made sure to mention. I brought a pie I had baked from scratch. My mother set the wine on the dining table, with both hands like it was a sacrament. She did not mention the pie. Over the turkey, my father leaned toward Elias with that particular smile, the one that pretends to be friendly. "So, Elias," he said, "when are you going to get a real job?" Blake chuckled from across the table. Genevieve tilted her head and said, "At least Maren has someone, right?" Her voice soaked in pity. Elias said nothing. He reached under the table and squeezed my hand. What nobody at that table knew, what I barely knew myself, was that Elias had recently finished a large painting for a new client that our landlord Ambrose had introduced him to. I did not ask questions. I did not think it was important. It was the most important thing that had ever happened to us. Ambrose Kettering was the kind of man you would walk right past unless you were paying attention. 68 years old, silver-haired, quiet. He wore the same corduroy jacket most days and drank his coffee black from a chipped mug that said Chelsea, New York on the side. He owned the old Victorian, where Elias and I rented the ground floor studio, $750 a month for a live work space, with 12-foot ceilings and north-facing windows. Absurdly cheap, even by Providence standards. When I once asked Ambrose why the rent was so low, he shrugged and said he would rather have artists in the building than accountants, no offense to accountants. To me, Ambrose was simply our landlord, a kind, retired art guy who let us pay late without charging a fee and brought us tomatoes from his garden in August. But Ambrose had a habit of wandering downstairs to watch Elias work. He would stand by the easel, coffee in hand, and say things like, "The light on the jawline, push it warmer, just half a degree." Elias would adjust and the whole painting would transform. One afternoon, Ambrose said something I almost let slip past me. He told Elias, "Your work reminds me of someone I used to represent, who now sells for 6 figures. I smiled politely. I assumed he was being generous. Around the same time, he mentioned that a friend of his wanted to see more of Elias's work and asked if Elias could photograph a few recent pieces and send them over. I figured it was another small gallery, maybe a regional collector. The world has a way of finding what is real, Maren. Ambrose said to me one evening while I was washing brushes in the sink. It just takes longer when you refuse to fake it. I should have asked more questions, but I was too busy worrying about the wedding. In December, Elias proposed. No ring at first, just a question asked softly while we were lying on the studio floor, surrounded by half-finished canvases, snow falling outside the window. He would carve a ring later from reclaimed walnut. It was the most beautiful thing anyone had ever given me. I called my parents that weekend to share the news. We had set the date, the 17th of May, a small garden ceremony at an inn near Little Compton, out where the land runs down to the water. Nothing extravagant. 45 guests, wildflowers, and Arch Elias was building from salvaged wood. My father's first response was, "The 17th of May, let me check. Not congratulations. Not, I am so happy for you. Let me check." He called back 2 days later. "I will be there, sweetheart," he said. "I will walk you down the aisle, I promise." I held those words like glass. My mother asked, "That is nice, honey. How much is it costing?" She did not ask about my dress. She did not ask about the flowers. She did not ask if I was happy. Genevieve sent one text, "Congrats, let me know if you need help with anything." Then silence. No follow-up, no phone call, no offer to help plan, taste cakes, choose a venue. From the sister who styled herself as an event planner, that silence was loud. Elias and I did everything ourselves. I designed the invitations by hand, watercolor wildflowers on cream cardstock, each one slightly different. I thought about Genevieve's wedding 6 years earlier. 280 guests, gold foil invitations, a 10-piece band. But I loved our little cards. They were ours. I should have known something was wrong when Genevieve did not argue about the date. She always has an opinion about everything. This time she said nothing, and silence from my sister is never a good sign. 3 weeks before the wedding, I got a phone call from my Aunt Glenda, my mother's younger sister, and the family's designated gossip, and she said something that knocked the breath out of me. "Honey," she said, "are you going to Genevieve's shower too, or just the wedding? They are the same day, right?" I stood in my kitchen holding a paintbrush, turquoise dripping onto the floor. "What shower?" I said. "The baby shower," she said. "The 17th of May, at the club up in Chestnut Hill." "Did you not get the invitation?" I had not gotten the invitation. I called Genevieve. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice bright and rehearsed. "Oh my gosh, Maren," she said. "I did not realize. The venue Blake booked only had the 17th available. It is a whole thing with the caterer and the rental company. I cannot move it now." "But your wedding is in the afternoon, right? Maybe people can do both." My wedding was at 3 o'clock in Little Compton. Genevieve's baby shower was at noon at a country club in Chestnut Hill, outside Boston, an hour and a half away at the very least. No one could do both. She knew that. I knew that. The laws of geography knew that. The shower would have valet parking and be catered by a French restaurant, and have monogrammed gift bags at every seat. Genevieve described the details as though she were describing someone else's event, as though it were unavoidable, an act of God. But here is the thing that settled in my stomach like a stone. When I checked with Aunt Glenda, she confirmed that Genevieve had mailed the shower invitations 2 full weeks before I sent out my save the dates. 2 weeks before. She had known my wedding date for months. She chose it anyway. Maren, I am so sorry, Genevieve said, her voice sweet as arsenic. But this is my first baby. You understand, right? You can have a wedding anytime. I called my mother first. Mom, as I said, you know my wedding is that day. A pause. The kind of pause that already contains the answer. I know, honey, she said, but Genevieve really needs the family there. It is her first grandchild for your father and me. Can you not, maybe, postpone a few weeks? I have already paid the deposits, Mom, I said. They are non-refundable. We have sent the invitations. Well, she said, maybe not everyone needs to be at. I am sure some people will come to yours. Some people. To my wedding. Like it was an open mic night that might attract a few stragglers. I called my father next. He did what Wallace Sorensen always does when confronted with a problem. He deflected. Let me talk to your mother, he said. We will figure it out. He did not call back for 3 days. I texted him. Dad, are you still walking me down the aisle? He read it. I saw the little check mark turn. No reply. I called again, and on the third attempt, he finally answered. Of course, sweetheart, he said. I said I would. But the way he said it, the hollowness in it, the way the words came out like something he was reading off a card, I felt the ground shift under me. That week, I counted the responses. Out of 41 family members invited, 26 had already replied no. Every last one of them, by pure coincidence, was going to Chestnut Hill. I did not beg. I want you to know that. I asked once. I asked clearly. And I told myself that their answer, the real one, the one spoken through silence and logistics, and maybe not everyone needs to be there, would tell me everything I needed to know about where I stood. It told me everything. Yara, my best friend, an emergency room nurse who takes nobody's nonsense and has known me since college, was the one who showed me the full picture. Years ago, back when my mother thought it was nice to include Maren's friends, Yara had been added to the Sorensen family group chat. Nobody ever removed her. And because Yara is Yara, she had screenshotted everything. She sat me down in the studio one evening and laid it out. Genevieve had called every single family member individually. Not a group text, not a casual mention. Individual, surgical phone calls, each one designed to pull that person to her side. To my mother, Genevieve had said, if you go to Maren's wedding instead, I will feel like you do not care about your first grandchild. To Aunt Glenda, she had said, Blake's mother is coming, and if our side of the family does not show up, it will be embarrassing. And to my father, and this one Yara had as a screenshot from the group chat, Genevieve had written, Dad, Maren will understand. She is used to being disappointed. She is used to being disappointed. My own sister typed that with her thumbs and pressed send. But the deepest cut was the financial one. Blake paid my parents' mortgage, $3,400 a month. He had given my mother a credit card that covered her groceries, her clothes, her salon visits. The Sorensen family was not just emotionally dependent on Genevieve. They were financially leashed. Genevieve never said it out loud, of course. She did not need to. The threat lived in every gesture. Cross me and the money stops. And my parents, who had built their entire retirement around Blake's generosity, could not afford to call the bluff. There was one last message Yara showed me, from the group chat. Honestly, Genevieve had written, Maren's wedding is so small it is barely an event. She is marrying a painter in a garden. It is not like there is a reception at some grand hotel. I read it twice, then I closed the phone. The night before I sent my final message, Elias and I sat together in the studio. The overhead lamp threw warm yellow light across the half-finished canvases and the jars of turpentine. Outside, the crickets had started up, that low summer hum that never quite stops. Elias was cleaning brushes. He did not look up when he spoke. We do not need them to make this real, Maren, he said. A pause. But I know you want your dad there. I did not answer right away. I was staring at the canvas he had been working on. A single chair in an empty room, light pouring through a window. It was not meant to be about me, but it was. That night I wrote one final message, a group text to every family member who had been invited. No guilt trips, no desperation, just the facts. Date, time, address, directions, and at the end, one line. I hope to see you there. I pressed send at 10:47 in the evening. Not one person replied. The next morning, Yara called from Denver. She had already booked her flight. I will be there, she said. I will always be there. She did not ask about the others. She already knew. The morning of my wedding, Yara sat cross-legged on the bathroom counter doing my makeup. Hospital-grade precision, she called it. And I was trying to breathe normally. My dress hung on the closet door. My bouquet, white peonies and lavender from a farm stand near the coast, sat in a mason jar on the kitchen table. My phone buzzed. Dad, I picked up. Yara watched my face. Maren, honey, he said, and his voice sounded like it had been sanded down to nothing. I do not know how to say this. Your mother and I, The shower starts at noon, and with the drive I do not think we can make it to Little Compton by 3. I counted the silence. 8 seconds. 8 seconds in which the entire architecture of my childhood, every Father's Day card, every daddy, look what I drew, every time I had chosen to believe he loved me the same as her, collapsed like a house built on sand. "You promised, Dad," I said. "I know," he said, "and I am sorry, but this is Genevieve's first baby. You will have other moments." "No," I said. My voice did not shake, and I am proud of that. "This is my only wedding day, Dad. There will not be another one." "Do not make this harder than it has to be," he said. I hung up. I set the phone face down on the counter. My hands were trembling, but my eyes were dry. Yara said nothing. She picked up the mascara wand and kept going. Later that morning, Yara checked her phone and turned it toward me. Genevieve had already posted a story. Pink balloons, gold streamers, a venue being set up. The caption read, "So grateful to have the whole family here." Posted at 9 in the morning, 3 hours before the shower even started. I did not scream, I did not cry. I just thought, so this is what it feels like when the last thread snaps. The garden sat behind a small inn overlooking a salt marsh where the water turned silver in the afternoon light. Elias had spent 2 weekends building the arch, salvaged oak, sanded smooth, woven with fresh eucalyptus and white ribbon. It was simple, it was perfect. I arrived at 2:15. The chairs were already set up, 45 of them, white linen, each with a sprig of lavender tied to the back. From a distance they looked beautiful, like a painting of a wedding. Up close, 38 of them were empty. 7 people, that is who came. Elias, Yara, 2 friends of Elias from art school, a sculptor named Bram and a printmaker named Fern. Ambrose Kettering, in a suit I had never seen him wear, and 2 of my college friends who had driven up from New York. 7 people in 45 chairs. The wind moved through the empty rows and rustled the lavender as if it were trying to fill the silence. I stood at the end of the aisle in my thrift store dress. Vintage lace, ivory, tea-length. The seamstress had been right when she told me I looked like an old film star. It fit like it had been made for me. But standing there alone, without a hand to hold, without a father at my side, I felt every single empty seat like a bruise. The violin and cello began Pachelbel's canon, and the sound drifted out over the marsh. Yara stepped toward me. "I can walk you down," she said. I shook my head. "No," I said. "You are my maid of honor. You belong up there with Elias." I turned to face the aisle. Elias stood at the far end, and even from that distance, I could see his eyes were red. I was about to take the first step alone. Then I heard those footsteps behind me, heavy and deliberate and steady, and a voice said, "I believe I am overdressed for a garden party." I turned. Ambrose Kettering stood 3 feet behind me in a navy 3-piece suit, beautifully cut, clearly old, clearly treasured, with a pale blue pocket square and silver cufflinks that caught the light. I would notice the engraving on them later. The letters K&G Kettering Gallery. But in that moment, all I saw was the steadiness in his eyes. "If you would let an old man have the honor," he said, and he extended his arm. Something broke open in my chest, not the sharp kind of breaking, the kind where the light gets in. I looked at this man, our landlord, our neighbor, the quiet figure who drank black coffee in our studio, and told Elias to push the light warmer by 1/2 degree. And I understood something I had not understood before. Ambrose was not just kind. He had been watching, he had been paying attention, and he had shown up. "Ambrose," I said, "you do not have to." "I know I do not have to," he said. "I want to." His voice was calm and firm. "Your father should be here. But since he is not, someone who actually values you should." I took his arm. We walked. The 7 people in those chairs stood. Yara, already crying. Bram and Fern, smiling. Elias at the end of the aisle, pressing the back of his hand to his mouth. The ceremony lasted 12 minutes. Our officiant, a retired judge Elias knew through a community art project, kept it short. We said our vows, his written on a piece of canvas, primed in white, mine on the back of one of my illustrations. We both cried. We both laughed. 7 people clapped. And in that garden, on that afternoon in May, it was enough. It was more than enough. After the ceremony, we held the reception right there in the garden. There was no ballroom, no disc jockey, no 5-tier cake. We ordered pizza from a place in town. Yara had brought 3 bottles of wine. Nothing fancy, just something she loved. Bram connected his phone to a portable speaker, and we danced on the grass until the fireflies came out. It was joyful. It was imperfect. It was ours. But when the music faded, and Elias was helping Bram fold the tables, I sat down on one of the empty chairs and opened my phone. 0 messages from my family. Not one. No congratulations. No sorry we could not make it. No thinking of you today. Nothing, as though the day had not happened, as though I had not happened. I opened the app I should not have. Genevieve had posted 14 photos. The country club, pink and gold balloons. A dessert table that had cost more than my entire wedding. Aunt Glenda laughing with a glass of champagne. Uncle Perry holding a gift bag. And my father. My father standing beside Genevieve, his hand resting on her belly, grinning. The last photo was a selfie, Genevieve glowing in the center, surrounded by every face I had invited to my wedding. The caption read, "Surrounded by love, family is everything." She typed "family is everything" while I was saying my vows to 7 people in a row of empty chairs. I zoomed in on one of the background shots, a group near the bar. Blake was in the far corner, turned away from the camera, his phone pressed to his ear, his jaw tight. He looked stressed. It struck me as odd at a celebration, but I filed it away and did not think about it again. Not then. That night, back in the studio, Elias and I lay on the old futon that doubled as our couch. The windows were open and the crickets poured in like music. We had taken the lavender from the chairs and put it in jars all over the apartment, so the whole place smelled like the wedding had followed us home. Elias stared at the ceiling, his hand in mine. "I married the most talented, most stubborn, most beautiful woman I have ever known," he said, in a garden with 7 witnesses. He turned to face me. "And I would not trade it for a ballroom with 300. I tried to smile. I almost made it. "I keep thinking," I said. "Maybe if I had tried harder, called one more time." "You called enough," he said gently, but with a kind of finality, like a door closing softly on a room I did not need to enter. "You called more than enough, Maren." And it hit me then, not sadness for myself, but sadness for him. Elias had stood at the end of that aisle, watching his bride walk toward him on the arm of a 68-year-old landlord, because her own father could not be bothered to make the drive. "You deserved a family cheering for us," I whispered. "This was a real wedding," he said. "Ambrose was here, Yara was here. That is more family than blood gave you today." I cried then, quietly, into his shoulder, not because I was broken, but because I was so tired of holding it all upright. What I did not know that night was that Elias had a secret, something Ambrose had helped him with over the past several months, something he had deliberately kept from me so that our wedding day would not be about money. Something that would change everything within weeks. A week passed, then another. Not a single member of my family reached out. On the 8th day, I sent one final message. I typed it carefully, read it 3 times, and pressed send. "Thank you for your silence. It told me everything your words never could. I will not be reaching out again. If you want to talk, you know where to find me," my mother replied 2 days later. "Maren, do not be dramatic. We love you." Genevieve's shower was just bad timing. No apology, no acknowledgement, just the word dramatic, the Sorensen family's favorite weapon against anyone who dares to feel something out loud. I did not respond. I muted the group chat, and I turned my attention to the only thing that had never let me down. The work. Elias was painting again. Something new. Something I had not seen from him before. He had started a series he called The 7th Chair, large format oils about absence in intimate spaces. A dinner table, set for 8 with 1 chair pulled slightly back, untouched. A church pew, empty except for a folded program at one end. A row of white linen chairs in a garden, lavender on each one, 38 of them holding nothing but air. I knew what the paintings were about. He did not need to explain. One afternoon, Ambrose came downstairs to see the work. He stood in front of the garden piece for a long time, his coffee going cold in his hand. Then he pulled out his phone and typed something. He did not say who he was texting. I did not ask. I had stopped waiting for an apology that would never come, and I had started building a life that did not need one. But the truth was, without my knowing, something enormous was already being built, and it had Ambrose's fingerprints all over it. 2 weeks after the wedding, Ambrose invited Elias and me upstairs for coffee. Not the usual stop by if you want, an actual invitation. He had set out 3 mugs, a French press, and a cardboard box on the kitchen table. "Sit down," he said. "There is something I should have told you a long time ago." He opened the box. Inside were catalogs, exhibition catalogs from Kettering Gallery, Chelsea, New York City. Articles clipped from art magazines. Photographs of Ambrose standing beside artists at openings, people I recognized from museum walls. "I ran Kettering Gallery for 24 years, he said, setting a catalog in front of me. The cover showed a painting I had seen reproduced in textbooks. "I represented 41 artists in that time," he said. 6 of them are now in the permanent collection at the Whitney." I stared at him. The quiet man in the corduroy jacket, the landlord who charged us $750 a month and told us to push the light warmer. "You never told us," I said. "You never needed to know," he said, folding his hands. "I wanted to be sure about Elias first. I have spent my whole career learning the difference between competent and extraordinary. Elias is extraordinary." Then he told us the rest. 6 months earlier, before the engagement, before the wedding, before any of it, Ambrose had sent photographs of Elias's work to a man named Sebastian Wolf. Sebastian Wolf, the private collector, whose holdings included works by Richter and Hockney, whose name appeared in every major auction catalog in the Western world. Wolf had bought one piece immediately, $90,000. I looked at Elias. He nodded slowly, and I saw it, the thing he had been carrying. "I was going to tell you after the wedding," he said. I did not want it to overshadow our day. Over the next several days, the full scope of what Ambrose had set in motion became clear. Sebastian Wolf's attorney contacted Elias with a formal proposal, a commission agreement for 14 original paintings to be completed over the following 20 months for Wolf's private collection. Total contract value, $480,000, payable in installments tied to delivery milestones. Every term was spelled out, the payment schedule, the intellectual property provisions, the insurance during transit. It was the kind of contract artists spend entire careers dreaming about and never see. Attached to it was a separate letter from the director of the Devlin Gallery on West 24th Street in Manhattan, one of the most respected galleries in the country for contemporary realism. Her name was Beatrix Lowell, and she was inviting Elias to hold a solo exhibition. The centerpiece would be the 7th Chair series. Elias and I drove into Manhattan to sign the papers at the attorney's office. I sat in a leather chair and read every page, the numbers blurred. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. "This is more money than my father earned in 5 years at that bank," I said quietly. Ambrose, who had come along for the signing, laid his hand flat on the table. "And it is just the beginning," he said. "Sebastian does not invest in artists lightly. He is building a relationship, not buying a product. This will open every door Elias walks toward." Elias signed, the attorney notarized. Beatrix Lowell confirmed the exhibition timeline by email that same afternoon. It was real, all of it, documented, legitimate binding, and we had told no one, not a soul. My family still thought Elias was a man who painted for fun and could not make rent without my freelance income. They had no idea what was about to change. A week later, Sebastian Wolf called Elias directly. I was in the studio when Elias put it on speaker, not on purpose, but because his hands were covered in cadmium yellow. Wolf's voice was warm and unhurried, the voice of a man who has not been in a rush since the last century. "Elias," he said, "I understand you and your wife did not get the wedding trip you deserved. My yacht, the Aurelia, is in Portofino next month. I would like the two of you to spend 10 days aboard. Consider it a thank you for the first 3 paintings. The Aurelia. I would learn later that she was a 190-foot motor yacht that Wolf kept in the Mediterranean through the summer, where he hosted artists and curators and collectors. She was as much a floating salon as she was a boat. Elias, we cannot accept that," I whispered, covering the phone. He looked at me, then at the canvas, then back at me. "Ambrose says Wolf does this for every artist he commissions," he said. "It is how he builds relationships. It is professional, not charity." I hesitated, and then I thought of the 45 chairs, the empty garden, the father who chose a baby shower over my wedding, and I thought, I have spent my whole life making myself smaller so other people do not feel uncomfortable. "Not anymore." I said yes. Yara found out a few days later, and her reaction was exactly what you would expect. "Girl," she said, "you are going on a billionaire's yacht for your honeymoon, and your family thinks Elias is broke." She laughed so hard she choked on her coffee. "They do not know," I said, "and I am not going to tell them." I was not hiding anything. I had simply stopped performing for an audience that never once clapped. While we prepared for the trip, something was shifting in the Sorensen family, though I only caught it in fragments. Aunt Glenda, the one relative who still texted me now and then, mentioned in passing that Blake Sutton's real estate company had hit a rough patch. 2 major development projects had fallen through. The financing had collapsed. The details were vague, but the consequences were not. Genevieve's luxury SUV was gone, replaced by a used compact. Genevieve, who posted online the way other people breathe, had gone silent for 2 straight weeks. For her, that was a distress signal. Then, for the first time in over a month, my mother called. "Hi, honey. How are you?" she said, her voice with that particular brightness, the kind that is trying too hard. "Listen, do you and Elias want to come to dinner this Sunday? Your father grilled last weekend, and it was lovely. We would love to see you." I leaned against the studio wall. "I am busy, Mom," I said. "Oh," she said. "Okay," a pause. "Well, your father says hi." I hung up and stood there a minute, the phone warm in my hand, feeling the familiar weight of it. I knew exactly why she had called. When Blake's money was flowing, I did not exist. Now that it was drying up, the family was suddenly rediscovering its younger daughter. What none of them knew, what I did not fully understand yet myself, was that 3 weeks later, a single photograph would make Blake Sutton's money look like pocket change. We flew to Nice on a Tuesday morning in July, Elias with his sketchbooks, me with a suitcase, and we boarded the Aurelia in Portofino. She was not a boat, she was a floating cathedral. Our cabin had a private balcony that opened on Douro so blue it looked artificial. The bathroom had marble floors. The sheets were Egyptian cotton, and someone had placed fresh gardenias on the nightstand before we arrived. I stood on the balcony the first morning, barefoot, in a linen dress I had bought at a market in Nice for 35 euros, and watched the Italian coastline drift past like a painting Elias had not gotten to yet. On the third evening, Wolf hosted a dinner on the upper deck. 8 guests, 2 collectors from London, a curator from the Tate, an art critic based in Berlin, and their partners. The table was set with crystal and white linen, and candles flickered inside hurricane glass, while the sky turned from orange to indigo. Wolf stood and raised his glass. "I would like to introduce Elias Mercer," he said, "the most exciting realist painter I have encountered in 2 decades. His upcoming exhibition at the Devlin Gallery will be called The Seventh Chair. I think you will find his work extraordinary." Elias, seated beside me, described the concept, paintings about absence, about the empty spaces left behind by the people who choose not to show up. He spoke quietly, without performance. The critic from Berlin leaned forward. "This has biennale potential," he said, and the table murmured its agreement. I sat next to my husband, silent, my hand on his knee. For the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who recognized the value of what Elias and I had built, not in spite of its quiet origin, but because of it. Before dessert, Wolf found me alone at the railing. "Your husband is gifted," he said, "but I think you knew that long before anyone else did." "I did," I said. "Thank you for seeing it too." On our last evening aboard the Aurelia, I did something I almost never do. I posted a photograph. I am not a social media person. My account had maybe 150 followers, friends, a few illustration clients, some college acquaintances, and I had not posted in months. But that evening, as the sun dropped below the Mediterranean and the light turned the water to gold, and Elias wrapped his arms around me from behind, I wanted a record. Not for anyone else, for me. The photo was simple. Me at the bow of the Aurelia, in a white silk dress I had found in a boutique in Nice. Elias behind me with his chin resting on my shoulder, the Portofino coastline soft in the distance. On the table beside us, a glass of champagne, and half visible, the Devlin Gallery catalog with Elias's name on the cover. I wrote the caption in under 10 seconds. "Honeymoon with my husband. Grateful for the people who showed up." No tag, no explanation, no drama, just a sentence and a photograph. I posted it at 9 in the evening European time, 3 in the morning back on the East Coast. Then I put my phone in the nightstand drawer, kissed Elias goodnight, and fell asleep to the sound of the water against the hull. When I woke the next morning, I reached for my phone out of habit. The screen was a wall of notifications. I had to scroll for nearly a full minute just to reach the bottom. 463 missed calls and text messages. The same family that could not send one text on my wedding day suddenly had a great deal to say about where I had spent my honeymoon. 463. I sat on the edge of the bed and scrolled through them the way you would read an autopsy report, slowly, clinically, letting each one land. My father, 26 missed calls, 12 texts. The first, Maren, whose yacht is that? Then, call me back. Then, I did not know Elias was doing this well. Why did you not tell us? And finally, at 2 in the morning his time, honey, please call your dad. My mother, 19 calls, 8 texts. Oh my God, Maren. Then, is that Portofino? Then are you okay? Whose boat is that? And inevitably, I am so happy for you, sweetheart. We need to celebrate when you are back. Celebrate. The woman who could not be bothered to text congratulations on my wedding day now wanted to throw a party because she saw a yacht. Genevieve, 6 calls, restrained for her, and 3 messages, each one more revealing than the last. Wait, what? Then, is Elias's art actually selling? And finally, Maren, we should talk. Call me. The rest poured in like a flood, aunts and uncles and cousins and second cousins. People I had not heard from in years. Congratulations. So proud of you. We always knew Elias was talented. The same people who had checked no on my wedding were now lining up to claim they had believed in us all along. And then, at the very bottom, a message I had not expected. Blake Sutton, who had never texted me directly in his life. Maren, is your husband represented by a gallery? I would love to connect. Blake Sutton, the man whose money had bought my family's loyalty, was now trying to network through the sister-in-law he had barely acknowledged for 6 years. I read every message. I did not respond to a single one. Elias found me on the balcony an hour later, the phone face down on the table. He did not ask what the messages said. He could read it on my face. I am not going to ignore them forever, I said. But I am not going to pretend this is okay either. That afternoon, I unlocked the family group chat for the first time since I had muted it. I typed one message, revised it twice, and sent it. Thank you for your messages. Elias and I are doing well. For those who are curious, Elias signed a major art commission 6 weeks ago. The yacht belongs to his patron, Sebastian Wolf. Our honeymoon was a gift. I want to be honest. I will not pretend that your absence on the 17th of May did not hurt. It did, deeply. My father promised to walk me down the aisle and chose not to. My mother chose a baby shower over her own daughter's wedding. My sister scheduled her event on my wedding day deliberately. I am not angry, but I need space. When I am ready to talk, I will reach out. Please respect that. I pressed send. Then I put the phone back in the drawer. For 4 hours, nobody replied. I pictured them reading it in clusters, gathered around someone's kitchen counter, passing the phone, rereading it, looking at each other in the particular silence of people who have been caught. My father called at 8 that evening. I did not answer. An hour later, Genevieve posted a story, a beautifully set dinner table, warm lighting, wine glasses, with the caption, "Family dinner tonight, missing one. Missing one." As though I had simply failed to show up. As though I were the one who had left. Some people never stop rewriting the story, even when the whole room already knows the truth. 3 weeks after we returned, the Devlin Gallery issued its press release. Elias Mercer, the 7th Chair, a solo exhibition. It went out to every major art publication in the country. One ran a preview, another picked it up the same day, and then the one that mattered most, a feature in the arts section of the New York Times, with a photograph of Elias standing beside the centerpiece of the show. The painting was a garden rendered in luminous afternoon light, an arch of salvaged wood threaded with eucalyptus, 45 white chairs with lavender on each one, stretching in neat rows across a green lawn. 7 of them held figures, warm and alive, painted with the tenderness Elias reserves for the people he loves. The other 38 were empty. Sunlight fell across the vacant seats, like a question nobody wanted to answer. The title was The 17th of May. The price, $140,000, already sold. Wolf had claimed it before the exhibition even opened. The article said Elias's work explored familial absence and emotional displacement with a specificity that felt both deeply personal and universally devastating. It mentioned Sebastian Wolf's private collection. It mentioned the legacy of Kettering Gallery. It used the word extraordinary. On opening night, 200 people filled the gallery, collectors and curators and critics. I stood beside Elias in a simple black dress and watched strangers cry in front of paintings that had been born from the worst day of my life. A reporter approached Elias. The title, The 17th of May, she said. Is it autobiographical? Elias did not hesitate. Yes, he said. It was my wedding day. 7 guests, 45 chairs. The room went quiet. Then the questions began. By morning, the story was everywhere. I had not planned it. Elias had not planned it. But the truth, once it finds a stage, does not need permission. My father saw the article first. Someone forwarded it to him. I never found out who. But I can imagine him at the kitchen table in Barrington, reading glasses on, the newspaper open in front of him, staring at 45 chairs rendered in oil paint by a man who remembered every detail of the day his father-in-law did not show up. My mother called, her voice cracking in a way I had never heard before. Maren, she said, your father saw the painting. He has not spoken in hours. He just sits there. Mom, I said, I did not paint it. Elias did. He painted what happened. She had no answer for that. Genevieve's reaction was different. She was not sad. She was furious, not at herself but at the exposure. Within days, her friends began asking questions. Wait, your sister's husband is that Elias Mercer? Why were you not at her wedding? Genevieve, who had spent years curating a narrative of family unity and social grace, suddenly could not explain the gap. The image she had built, loving sister, devoted daughter, center of the Sorensen universe, now had a hole in it exactly 45 chairs wide. Blake called Elias directly. Hey, Elias, congratulations, he said. Listen, I have some clients who might be interested in commissioning something. Elias cut him off politely. Thanks, Blake, he said, but I work exclusively through my gallery now. Ambrose and the Devlin handle all my commissions. Meanwhile, Aunt Glenda sent me a screenshot from the group chat I was no longer in. Genevieve had written, she is doing this to humiliate us. And my father, for the first time in his life, had replied, maybe we should have gone to the wedding. My mother's response, do not start, Wallace. Even then, Even with the truth hanging on a gallery wall for 200 people to see, nobody in my family could say the 3 simple words. We were wrong. 2 months after the exhibition opened, a notice appeared in the state business registry that would have meant nothing to most people. Sutton Properties, Blake's family company, had filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. The details came out slowly and then all at once. 2 failed developments, a construction loan in default, creditors lining up. The company that had once made Blake the golden son-in-law of the Sorensen family was now a name on a court filing. The consequences reached my parents within weeks. Blake stopped paying the mortgage on the Barrington house, $3,400 a month, gone overnight. My mother's supplementary credit card was canceled. Genevieve, who had never had to think about money, began selling her jewelry through a luxury consignment site, the diamond bracelet, a designer pendant, pieces she had once displayed like trophies. My father called me, the first time since the article. "Maren," he said, "I do not know how to say this." His voice was thin and tired. "Your mother and I, we might lose the house. I know I have no right to ask, but is there any way?" I let the silence sit. I think he needed to hear it. The same silence I heard on my wedding morning when he told me he was not coming. "Dad," I said, "I am going to be honest with you. 6 months ago, you chose Genevieve's party over my wedding. You broke a promise. You let me walk down the aisle with our landlord because showing up for me was not worth the drive." I heard him breathing. "I am not going to say no to helping," I said. "But I need you to understand something first. I am not your backup plan. I am your daughter, and you treated me like I was optional." He did not speak for a long time. Then, quietly, "You are right. It was not enough. But it was a start." Genevieve called 2 days later, the first time we had spoken since before the wedding. She opened with tenderness. "I miss you, Maren." The soft voice she uses when she wants something. And then, within 30 seconds, the mask slipped. "Blake lost everything," she said. "Mom and Dad need help. You and Elias are doing so well now. Can we not just move past this?" "Move past what, exactly?" I said, keeping my voice even, not cold, just clear. "You scheduled your baby shower on my wedding day. You called every family member and told them to choose you. You told Dad I could have a wedding anytime. Do you remember that?" Silence. Then, "I was pregnant, Maren. I was hormonal and scared, and you were calculating." I said it without malice, just as fact. "And that is okay," I said. "I am not here to punish you, but I need you to know that I see it clearly now. I have always seen it. I just chose to ignore it because I wanted a family." I could hear her breathing change, the practiced calm faltering. "I love you, Genevieve," I said, "but I will never again let love be used as a leash. If you want a relationship with me, it starts with honesty, not with asking for money." She hung up. She did not call back for 3 weeks. I set the phone down and walked into the studio, where Elias was finishing the 9th painting in the series. A long table with 11 place settings, 1 chair pulled back, a napkin folded but untouched. He looked up when I came in. "How did it go?" he said. "She hung up," I said. He nodded. "She will call back." "Maybe," I said. "But she will call back different, or she will not call back at all. Those are the only 2 options I am accepting." Elias went back to painting. I picked up my illustration pen. The crickets sang outside, indifferent to all of it. 6 months later, I stood in the kitchen of a house I owned. It was small, a 2-bedroom cottage in Bristol, Rhode Island, 10 minutes from the water. White clapboard, blue shutters, a porch that wrapped around the side. The ground floor had been converted into Elias's studio. Proper ventilation, north-facing light, a door that opened onto a garden, where, in the spring, I planned to grow lavender. We had paid for it in full. No mortgage, no help, no one's name on the deed but ours. Elias had completed the 7th chair, 14 paintings that had hung in the Devlin Gallery for 3 months. Nearly every piece sold. The total revenue passed $700,000, and the waiting list for his next series was already growing. Wolf had offered a second commission. 2 European galleries had reached out. My own career had shifted too. A major children's book publisher had offered me a multi-book illustration contract after someone from their art department attended the Devlin opening and recognized my editorial style. The first book was about a little girl who plants a garden of wildflowers in a field where nothing was ever supposed to grow. I illustrated it at the dining table every morning while Elias worked downstairs. Ambrose came for dinner every Sunday. He drove over in his old Volvo and brought a bottle of wine, nothing expensive, always good, and sat at our table like he had always been there, because in every way that mattered, he had. One Sunday I served roast chicken with herbs from the garden, and Ambrose raised his glass. "To the 7th chair," he said. Elias clinked his glass against Ambrose's. I clinked mine against both. 7 people at a wedding, and every single one of them still in my life. On a Tuesday afternoon in October, I heard a car pull into the gravel driveway. No one had called ahead. I opened the front door and found my father standing on the porch in a flannel shirt and khakis, his hands in his pockets. He looked older than I remembered, not in the way of time passing, but in the way of a man who has been carrying something heavy and cannot set it down. "I did not come to ask for anything," he said. I waited. "I came to tell you that I am sorry," he said. Not the kind of sorry that expects forgiveness. The kind that knows it does not deserve it. He stood there in the October light, leaves drifting across the porch, and I could see he had rehearsed it. Not because it was not genuine, but because it was. And he needed to say it exactly right. "I sat in a country club eating finger sandwiches while my daughter got married with 7 people," he said. "I will carry that for the rest of my life." "I know, Dad," I said, my voice steady and quiet. "You can stay for coffee." Elias just made a pot. He came inside and walked slowly through the house, looking at everything: the studio downstairs, the garden through the back window, Elias's paintings on the walls. In the hallway, he stopped. A small painting hung near the coat hooks, the 17th of May, study number 1, an early sketch in oil, 7 chairs filled, 38 empty. My father stood in front of it for a long time. Then he reached into the bag he was carrying and pulled out a frame. Inside was a certificate, the statewide art award, dated 10 years ago, my name on it, the paper gone yellow. "I found it in the attic," he said. "It should have been on the wall 10 years ago. I took it from him, and I let him stay for coffee." People always ask me, "Did you forgive them?" The honest answer is that forgiveness is not a single event. It is not a gift you hand over and then it is finished. It is a bridge you build one plank at a time, and some days you are laying planks, and some days you are standing at the edge, wondering if it is even worth crossing. Genevieve eventually wrote me a letter. A real one, pen on paper, mailed with a stamp. It was not a perfect apology, but it contained the one sentence I had been waiting years to hear. "I scheduled the shower on your day," she wrote. "It was not an accident. I was afraid that if your wedding went well, everyone would stop needing me." I read that line 4 times. Then I folded the letter and put it in my desk drawer. Not in the trash, not on the wall, in the drawer where I could find it when I was ready. My mother calls once a week now. She asks about my work, about Elias's paintings, about the garden. She does not ask for money. It is a small thing, but it is a true one. Blake and Genevieve live in a rented apartment now. Blake took a position at another firm and is starting over. Genevieve got a job, her first in 7 years, as an events coordinator for a nonprofit. I hear she is good at it. I hope she is. And me? I am standing on the back porch of a house I paid for myself, watching the evening light settle over the garden. Elias is in the studio. I can hear the soft scrape of his palette knife through the open window. Ambrose is on his way over for Sunday dinner. The lavender I planted in the spring has started to bloom. 45 chairs, 7 people, 463 messages. In the end, the numbers do not matter. What matters is that I stopped counting the people who left and started counting the ones who stayed. Ambrose was right, all those months ago, at the sink with the brushes. The world has a way of finding what is real. It just takes longer when you refuse to fake it. And here is the only lesson I have to give you. You do not have to burn yourself down to keep other people warm. If this stayed with you, if you have ever been the one sitting in the empty chairs while someone else got the full room, I want you to know that I see you. You are not invisible. You never were. Stay a while, and I will see you in the next one.